Good evening, everyone. My name is Rajni Dhingra, and I'm the Marketing Manager at Taylor & Francis India. Honorable Vice President of India, Shri M. Venkaiah Naidu, Honorable Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Shri Narendranath Bohrao, Professor Meenakshi Gopinath, former Principal, Lady Shri Ram College, Nitasha Devasar, Managing Director, Taylor & Francis India, Dipankar Shri Gyan, Director, Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Smriti, Ms. Gauri Singh, Student of Law Faculty, University of Delhi, Shri B.P. Singh, former Governor of Sikkim and author of the 21st Century Geopolitics, Democracy and Peace. Our respected speakers and distinguished guests, it gives me immense pleasure to extend to you all a very warm welcome on behalf of Taylor & Francis India, Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Smriti and India International Center for the book launch of The 21st Century Geopolitics, Democracy and Peace by Shri Balmiki Prasad Singh. Taylor & Francis is the world's largest social sciences publisher with books under the Routledge, CRC Press, Psychology Press and Focal Press imprints. We publish more than 2,600 journals and over 7,000 new books each year with a books backlist in excess of 1,20,000 specialist titles in 40 subject categories. Our Routledge India Originals program extends the Routledge tradition of excellence through academic publishing in social sciences and the humanities to India and South Asia. Today marks the release of our latest title published by Routledge India Original, The 21st Century Geopolitics, Democracy and Peace by Shri Balmiki Prasad Singh, and we are very proud to celebrate this momentous occasion with all of you. I would like to start the program today by inviting Natasha Devasar, Managing Director, Taylor & Francis India and South Asia, to podium to deliver the welcome address.
Honorable Vice President Shri Venkaiah Naidu, Shri N. Vora, Governor Jammu and Kashmir, our distinguished author Shri B.P. Singh, Shri Dipankar Shri Gyan from the Gandhi Smriti, Professor Meenakshi Gopinathan, young Gauri, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this mega star-studded event. I have known Shri B.P. Singh for about 20 years now. And what never ceases to amaze me is the breadth and ambition of his scholarship, the depth of his insight, and the fellowship and fellowship he invites. Today's gathering is a testimony of this. His book joins our Indian list of about 350 books and our global list of 7,000 books. It is simultaneously available in India and globally, both in print and e-form, making it visible and discoverable to readers who would like to, potential readers and readers who would like to read it. It also fulfills a very important part of my job as Managing Director of Taylor & Francis, which is not just to bring global scholarship into India, but to take the best of Indian scholarship into the global arena. And this book, we are very, very proud to say, meets that criteria directly, strongly, and visibly. We have content from India going through our books and journals, about 4%, and it is our ambition through our efforts of our editorial and other teams to grow this to 10%. And I hope this book inspires people to be part of the Taylor & Francis network and to help us achieve that ambition. India is our third largest market globally, an important research and growth center, and all I can say is that I'm delighted to have this long association with Mr. B.P. Singh culminate yet again into another fabulous book, and we look forward to carrying on our collaboration and partnership with him with many more books. And I conclude with welcoming you all once again to this event. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I now request Ms. Gauri Singh, student at the Faculty of Law, Delhi University, to very kindly read an excerpt from the book, The 21st Century Geopolitics, Democracy and Peace by Shri Balmiki Prasad Singh.
A very good evening to Honorable Vice President of India, Honorable Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Professor Meenakshi Gopinath, Director Routledge India and Director Gandhi Smriti, and my grandfather Mr. B.P. Singh, and the enlightened members of this audience. I am Gauri Singh. I'm pursuing law from Faculty of Law, University of Delhi, and I'm here to share a few excerpts from the upcoming book, The 21st Century, Geopolitics, Democracy and Peace. The author, Mr. B.P. Singh, as the Dalai Lama puts it in his message, is a distinguished scholar, thinker and public servant. And as Professor Rolf Bulgens writes in his foreword, has consistently engaged in intellectual endeavors and cross-fertilized it with the tasks of bureaucracy. I, however, have always referred to him as my Baba and wish to continue with this practice for this event as well. Baba bestowed it upon me to give effect to this task because he believes, and rightly so, that the youth is the bedrock of the 21st century. I thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Before divulging into the excerpts of the book, it is of the essence to look into its structure. There are three main facets to this book. Peace and democracy, set out in chapter 1 and 5 respectively, are crucial to this book. And third, my personal favorite, the interplay of ideas, the Indian story, in chapter 2. Talking about peace, Baba discusses the Bahuda approach. He writes, the Bahuda approach of one truth, many interpretations has been an important feature of the higher forms of every civilization. Further, he says that my sense of optimism and confidence that nation states will cooperate in the elimination of terrorism, violence, makes me believe that the menace of terrorism in its present form will become a thing of past in the coming decades. But this outcome will not come by itself. The state system, civil society organizations, concerned citizens have to take stronger action against terrorism. As I look towards the future, other challenges, removal of poverty, disease, illiteracy, and inequality will, however, persist. Imploring the readers to think, Baba asks this very important question. Should we not make Bahuda a global creative venture, a cornerstone of liberal democracy and a plural world? Next, talking about democracy, he has established the essentials of democracy, where he says that the satisfactory working of democracy needs 1. High caliber of politicians, 2. The availability of choices through competition and even consensus, 3. A civil service of good standing, 4. A culture of respect for differences and diversity of opinions, and 5, the most important, a positive attitude that shuns criticism only for the sake of criticism. Further, he writes, democracy is desirable because it nurtures development and is mindful of justice. We have people who believe and practice the notion that markets and commercial pursuits are better secured in a democratic system. They also swear that democracy alone provides a credible covenant for an egalitarian and inclusive social order. There are others who claim that democracy fosters democratic peace and helps reduce the risk of war, particularly among democratically ruled states. In conclusion, for the chapter of democracy, Baba has identified the issues and explains that today the threat of democracy is not from ideals of communism and other forms of authoritarian rules. It emanates instead from high unemployment, soaring inequality, financial and economic instability, and the poor quality of services of the state, even in key areas of security and justice. Good governance is the principal issue. Lastly, my favorite chapter, he talks about the India in his second chapter, and where he says that India's march towards progress and celebration of diversity has been guaranteed by democracy and the rule of law. In fact, India's political stability can be strengthened by a strong and decisive political leadership through its democratic institutions and pluralist ethos. Creative leadership igniting the minds of youth can accelerate both the pace of progress and the construction of an inclusive society in India. Talking about the interplay of ideas and its significance, Baba writes that ideas ignite events and go on to shape the course of history. India, however, stands out for its nurturing of multiplicity of views and the richness of the content of ideas in its ageless history. Some of the ancient texts of Indian achievements ascribed to sages and saints in the prehistoric era show an astounding degree of intellectual advancement. Our sages thousands of years ago accepted that there should be several ways of looking at the truth. As a result, no single idea has dominated the Indian consciousness. Baba's line of thought can be summarized in this paragraph, where he rightly says that what has changed the world for better or worse is by acquisitions of habits and outcomes of mind and heart. Battering ideas in solitude and or through dialogue with others has been an important feature in India's history. The story of interplay of ideas in India is of relevance to the wider world as well. In fact, in today's world, This kind of story of India and similar experiences of other countries would enrich and strengthen a global commons of the mind. In conclusion, all I would like to say is that despite all the trials and turbulences, all the hate and the hate mongers, just like my Baba, I hold hope and optimism for the 21st century. Thank you.
Honorable Shri Balmiki Singh Ji, Natasha, the star of the evening, Gauri Singh, a student, and distinguished guests, excellencies, and friends. It's a singular honor, really, to be here today at the release of this truly important book. The book itself is panoramic and almost encyclopedic in its sweep, and the range of issues, as you have heard from the Honorable Vice President, is so wide that to try and compress this protean discursive field into the Procrustean bed of a brief overview is a daunting task. However, I will try. The seminal question that is posed in this book is, how should we live in the 21st century? It's an audacious question, especially to ask in this postmodernist world. But it is asked with the humility of a seeker for whom learning is the perennial journey. The author responds to a world where, as Marshall Berman says, quoting Marx, all that is solid melts into air, when everything seems pregnant with its contrary. The newfangled sources of wealth, by some weird spell, are turned into sources of want. All our invention and progress seem to result in endowing material forces with intellectual life and stultifying human life into a material force. The book itself comprises two distinct strands and narratives. They form, I believe, the yin and the yang, the karta and the drishta elements of the book. One that informs the meta-narratives and the formal structure of the book, covering issues delineated in its chapterization. This strand draws from the discourse of the Enlightenment, of reason, and skepticism of dogma, of liberty, of tolerance, fraternity, constitutionalism, and liberal democracy. The other is like the mythological river Saraswati, the river beneath the flow of the book, not overt, but subliminal. This is the space where you will find a Gandhi, a Tagore, and other dramatis personae could be Tulsidas, who's often quoted in the book, Rumi, Rahim, Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, perhaps even a Kumaraswamy and a Zimmer. This is the space where plural cultures breathe, unmindful of monolithic structures. The first narrative speaks to reason and linear time. The second, to empathy and captures the fragrance of the soil in cyclical time. And then cradled or nestled between them, but veering more to the latter, is the idea and praxis of Bahuda that the author wishes to offer as a possible panacea to heal our embattled world, as an antidote to the monocultures of the mind that, and I quote, erect mind walls between peoples, between cultures, of different ways of being and seeing, and these threaten peace. Bahuda speaks to how cultures collide, coalesce, cohere, and coexist, and sees our own civilization through what I believe is the Nehruvian idiom as a palimpsest on which layer upon layer of thought and reverie have been inscribed, and yet no succeeding layer completely erased what was written before. And it is as T.S. Eliot has said, where time present and time past are both perhaps in present, in time future, and in time future is contained time past. Bahuda is a multi-layered concept, rich with possibilities. It allows us to render despair unconvincing and hope practical. But before I return to the takeaways for us from this, one observation. This particular aspect of the book's rendering, I have retitled Balmiki's Song. With apologies to the publisher, I think it captures better the hermeneutics of the text. For this is indeed a journey as edifying as it is humbling. It is essentially a journey that began when 8-year-old Balmiki Prasad Singh, under the influence and tutelage of his grandfather, Gandhian and committed educationist, the towering Hriday Narayan Singh, was admitted directly to class 8. Imagine being admitted to class 8 at the age of 8 in the Mahatma Gandhi school in his village Bihar near Begusarai. The principal had observed then that he was intensely engaged with a colored globe in his office and found the lad to be of exceptional talent and genius. From then on, there was no looking back, graduating with top honors at the age of 16 in political science and then a master's degree, breaking all previous records to become the much awarded Indian and international civil servant, and finally to retire as governor of Sikkim. But the quest, a Nachiketas-like curiosity that began in those formative years for the meaning and purpose of life, remained the eternal tanpura that resonates right through the book, in educating himself about learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, and above all, learning to live together. It nudged him to explore domains beyond his vocation, scholarly pursuits, intellectual and philosophical inquiry, gradually moving towards explorations into the realm of the spiritual. And now to return to the Bahuda approach, about which so much has been spoken, that is at the core of the author's vision, and which for me is the essential takeaway from this book. The term Bahuda is drawn from its original incantation and the aphorism in the Rig Vedic text. It says, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, which translates roughly as one reality, but the learned speak of it differently. B.P. Singh moves this beyond its literal exegetical meaning to suggest a dialogue of harmony in an unfolding continuum of engaging with the multiple manifestations of reality for peaceful living in society. A celebration of diversity, an attitude of mind that respects empathy, which is the ability to step into the other's shoes, and genuine dialogue, which is at the core, as is respect and understanding. It also involves a recognition that too much emphasis on Ekam Sat, or the one universal truth, could lead to fundamentalist positions, and so this expansive approach to Bahuda is context sensitive and acknowledges that different people, you, me, people outside, may require different mental diets. The author believes, as has been said before, that India's civilizational strength and indeed its leverage as a global player would depend upon sustaining and nurturing its innately pluralistic ethos, which is under threat today. The author points to the central role of education consciously, using the tolerance between beliefs and not only religious beliefs to build a world that is waiting to be born. So for those of us engaged with education, what is the message of Bahuda as a pedagogy for peace and the training of the mind? There's some takeaways. The challenge is to combine and reconcile the quest for excellence and inclusivity with humility, and to be genuinely mindful of the interconnectedness of all sentient beings. Second, to connect the microcosm with the macrocosm, attempting always to link the particular with the universal, the local with the global. Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmandi. Then to build a sensitivity that recognizes this connectedness. And as Blake said, you pluck a flower and you disturb a star. And you need to have the sensibility which can see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower, to hold eternity in the palm of your hand. So the power and impact of this approach could reverberate across words, and your choice, every choice you make, has the power to impact many universes. The other aspect is for education, as a takeaway, because he pleads for an integrated education, is to provide in spaces of learning the opportunities for what Amartya Sen has called capacious heterodoxy, where there could be different ways of seeing and doing and to discuss things differently, and to provide adequate space for the dissenting tradition and escape the arrogance of certitude, to recognize differences, not sweep them under the carpet, but to build on commonalities. In true Socratic spirit, to continuously put our own truths to stringent scrutiny, because ultimately that alone is knowledge that leads to liberation. Liberation from dogma, from ignorance, and the ego, and the greatest resistors to peace. So Sa Vidya Ya Vimuktaye is about this kind of liberation. That alone is knowledge that leads to liberation. Bahuda in education is also transmitting the values of genuine dialogue, of going beyond Vad and Vivad. It is about Samvad, and to incorporate the reflexivity of the Nalanda tradition of learning that informed the practices of some of our ancient universities. Genuine dialogue, according to B.P. Singh, is a prerequisite to understanding and building peace, and it requires active listening. I think perhaps we as Indians can take this away from the book. The Bahuda approaches and highlights that genuine dialogue is open-ended and flowing. It explores rather than settles questions, but it also involves moments of silence, deep and reflective. We all know that great music is often made in the silence between notes. Soli is here and he's a musician, he would tell you that. So spaces of higher learning have forgotten the value of immersion in that centered stillness where space is cleared, time is stayed, and the horizon itself expands. So Bahuda consequently invokes an integrated education where the conventional and tired dichotomies of science versus spirituality, and where not just the science of the formal laboratory, but the world of craft, the world of classics, indigenous systems of healing, of music, art, can coalesce seamlessly. Bahuda is also offered as an approach to conflict resolution, but the predispositions to peace need to develop in an orientation akin to the several facets that are implicit in the Gandhian idea of Swarajya, or genuine freedom, like asteya, non-stealing, asangraha, non-greed, non-accumulation, samnayasa, holding things in trust, atmaupamya, exchanging oneself for others, and ultimately self-reliance and swadeshi. And for this, the image that really comes up in my mind is a combination of the lotus and the charkha. This is also a call to move beyond merely skill development in education, move beyond technique to look at phronesis. And therefore, Balmiki's song is also speaking not just to chronos, not just to calendars and deadlines and immediate and linear time, but also to kairos, the transcendent, the absolute, the ultimate reverberations of time. And to also recognize that ultimately all learning and Bahuda is to bring us close to an understanding of our purpose on this planet. So we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring, as Eliot said, will be to arrive where we began and to know the place for the first time. So finally, can India offer effective responses to the monotheism of consciousness that threatens to invade life in the global village? To the metaphor of the circle with one defining center, can it counterpose the trajectory and the interdependence of the ellipse? Can context sensitivity, once the paradigm of classical Indian approaches to grammar, to time, to music, to space, and indeed rules of behavior, once again inform our systems of meaning? Can the emphasis on interdependent roles and spaces, once characteristic of community coexistence across groupings and boundaries, once again enter the world of learning? Can education evolve a vocabulary that is as sensitive to the pain on our planet as it is to the perfection of a bud unfolding? Can it work not merely to comfort the afflicted, but also to afflict the comfortable, especially when they are comfortably, arrogantly wrong? So what is the one unique feature that will set the 21st century apart and distinguish it from others, not merely modifying or continuing the tendencies of the 20th century? What will that unique, humane impulse be? That, friends, will be the sequel to Balmiki's song. So I end with the words of Dashant Kumar and a sentiment that echoes throughout the book. Since there are several quotations of Dinkar in Hindi in the book, I take the liberty. It is a poem that everybody here knows, everybody in the audience, but I will share it again because that, I believe, is part of Balmiki's song. हो गई है पीर पर्वत सी पिघलनी चाहिए, इस हिमालय से कोई गंगा निकलनी चाहिए। सिर्फ हंगामा खड़ा करना मेरा मकसद नहीं, लेकिन सिर्फ हंगामा खड़ा करना मेरा मकसद नहीं, लेकिन मेरी कोशिश है कि ये सूरत बदलनी चाहिए। मेरी कोशिश है कि ये सूरत बदलनी चाहिए। मेरे सीने में नहीं तो तेरे सीने में सही, हो कहीं भी आग लेकिन आग जलनी चाहिए।
Thank you so much for reading the excerpt. We are privileged to have Honorable Shri Narendranath Boram, Governor of Jammu and Kashmir amongst us, and I would like to request you, sir, to please come and deliver the address.
Honorable Vice President of India, Venkaiah Naidu Sahib, Professor Meenakshi Gopinath, my former young colleague, the distinguished author BBC, well-known publishers, Gauri, who's spoken very well just now, and eminent guests and invitees this evening. And this young lady just now mentioned that I am to deliver some kind of address. Well, let me disappoint you straight away that I have no such intention. BP had asked me a little while ago that I expected me to speak on the book, which I would have been very happy to do. But as it happened, the copy of the volume he sent me, I was traveling and I came here. I've just gone through the contents, and I think he's done a lot of good work, and the book is definitely going to be very interesting and very useful to read. One chapter which I quickly see in the headlines, the headings, the subheadings, relates to good governance. Now I cannot resist the temptation, even though for a few minutes, to say that I have been in the business of administration for a fairly long time now. And many of my colleagues are present here today, young and old. We seem to have a problem now, and I think it'll be useful to accept that we need to deal with the challenges of good governance, the functioning of public institutions, ethics, morality, transparency, accountability, which mark and are the basis of good governance, seem to be eroding and have been eroding for quite some time at a reasonably steady pace. Now, this affects the enforcement of the rule of law, and the failure of the enforcement of the rule of law in its own turn, leads to many other problems. Environmental insecurity, lawlessness, the ordinary and the common man not feeling protected or secure, the various problems facing the common people of the country not getting done, all that leads to a situation which is considerably worrying, if I may say so. So I will not go any further and expatiate on this theme, except to say that in my own time, when I was in service, I had occasion to say then, and I have had occasion to say subsequently, that certain connectivity between dishonest elements in the polity, in the public services, and the organized criminals, the mafia, has been behind a considerable amount of our problems. I say this because B.P. Singh's book lays a great emphasis, considerable length on good governance. So we have to renew the system, rid the system of all these unseemly elements. Some of these elements are international in security terms. And the viciousness of this connectivity permeates across the board and erodes the functioning of institutions, makes them ineffective, to the detriment of the interests of our common people. So I will go through this particular chapter with great interest and possibly have another occasion to speak on this subject. On this occasion, very briefly, I would congratulate BP once again for this very scholarly effort and hope that his book is read by all serious-minded people who have interest in the future of the nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. May I now request our chief guest, Honorable Vice President of India, Shri M. Venkaiah Naidu, to please release the book, and other respected dignitaries on dais to please join us for this formal release. I would now like to invite our chief guest, Honorable Vice President of India, Shri M. Venkaiah Naidu, and request for address.
Honorable Governor of Jammu Kashmir, Sri Narendranath Boraji, Professor Natasha Devsar, Managing Director of the publication, Acharya Professor Meenakshi Gopinath, Mr. Deepankar Gyan, Gauri Singh, student faculty of law, and a distinguished gathering here this evening, brothers and sisters. I really feel elated more than the book by seeing all of you here today. The entire cream of Delhi is here. And I would love to, that's a testimony to the wisdom and knowledge of Sri B.P. Singh. Speaks about all these people, and in fact I feel that he has given me a treat this evening of meeting this many galaxy of people whom I knew, whom I used to admire and also adore some of them right from my younger days. It's really a good evening for me that way. Friends, Sri B.P. Singh ji has met me recently and requested me that I should release a book. I don't know why he has chosen me. I am neither a diplomat nor a very intelligent person. I am son of a farmer. I come from a very humble background. But still, by virtue of, I think, my position as the Vice President of India, he thought I should do it. I readily accepted because as an officer, civil servant, I used to observe very keenly VP Singh, including his days of Home Ministry and subsequently as a governor. He was not only a distinguished civil servant, but also one of the officers who did his work with dedication and determination. I compliment him for penning this book, which is highly relevant in the context of increasing globalization, growing terrorism, and unprecedented technological advances that are rapidly changing the way we live. Frankly speaking, this book generates a lot of optimism and dispels cynicism about the future of the world and focuses on the innate goodness in all human beings. It has great relevance to our times. We live today in a turbulent world, a world that's being fragmented by narrow walls of prejudice on every conceivable issue. This book presents a viewpoint that is radically and refreshingly different. It indeed deals with a wide range of issues that are increasingly affect an interdependent globalized world and strongly advocates that it would be ideal if we can adopt a Bahuda approach which emphasizes the need for a dialogue to promote a harmonious and peaceful living. It needs no reiteration that peace is an essential prerequisite for progress of mankind. If there is tension, you cannot have attention. That has been our experience. And we have been the victims of the same from our neighbor who is always aiding, abetting, funding, training terrorism, causing immense damage to themselves and to ourselves also. We have that experience. Just now I had a meeting with the Italian Prime Minister. He came to call on me. We were discussing and they were also very much concerned, even the Europe also. Earlier, India used to be the victim and others used to watch them and just used to offer lip sympathies. Now, as they themselves are Western countries also becoming victims of terror, they are also realizing the damage done to the humanity, to the peace in the globe by the terror and its sponsors. Friends, as I said, peace is an essential prerequisite for progress of mankind, especially when the world is witnessing an increasing number of conflicts. In the context of the rise of terrorism and religious fundamentalism, which are threatening world peace like never before, the Bahuda approach advocated by the author is a good way to resolve even the most intractable problems. I basically believe that terror has no religion. But unfortunately, some people are trying to rope in terror, spoil the minds of the youngsters, and then induce them and influence them towards this heinous activity. It has no religion, it has no race, it has no sex. It is a threat to the humanity. This should be curbed, both ideologically as well as through other methods also. Friends, the issues touched upon in the book includes the role of education institutions, progressive religious and social groups, forums for interfaith dialogue, and international institutions like United Nations. It makes a strong case for promoting moral values, empathy, and compassion, and channelizing energies towards peace and development. Peace and progress go together. The author, while outlining the rationale behind the book, refers to the complexity of the evolving world in the 21st century. He has touched upon key trends like unprecedented scientific and technological development, previously unheard of prosperity, and mind-boggling advances in the means of communication. He recognizes major challenges confronting us like conflicts, natural calamities, hunger, malnutrition, pandemics, denial of education, violation of human rights, and much else. These are all serious problems. However, he is not pessimistic. He believes that despair would be a kind of self-indulgence. One can see there are many positive signs on the geopolitical map of the world. He concludes and observes that the respect for another person's point of view, the cornerstone of the Bahuda approach, is on the rise. There is nothing new. This is the Indian philosophy right from the beginning. We are a great civilization. We had civilizations, Greece, Athens, even Babylonia, Roman and all, Egypt. But you could see that Indian civilization, which is 5,000 years old, it is surviving because based on Vasudhaika Kutumbam. Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu. We should live and allow others also to live in peace. And we should have harmony. That's the basic philosophy of the country. If you look at the history, India has no history of invading any country, attacking any country at any time. In spite of a lot of people, even sundry coming us and ruling us, ruining us, looting us and cheating us also. In spite of all this background, India was steadfast. That's why this civilization is growing and it's becoming more and more appealing to the entire world community. While discussing how terrorism and fundamentalism are threatening world peace, the author says the new challenge calls for bold and imaginative statecraft from world leaders. He proposes the concept of Bahuda while calling for transcending age-old peace mechanisms and reconstructing our language of discourse. Nobody can be in disagreement with his viewpoint that Bahuda approach is necessary at individual level, at a group level, at the national level, at the global levels. It provides a moral choice between the clash of civilizations and harmony among civilizations, as he puts it. In the chapter on interplay of ideas, the Indian story, Mr. Singh rightly points out that India is much more than a large marketplace. Its history is not only a story of kings and queens and mere chronicle of invasions and conquests, both in times of decline and distinction. India is a land alive with vital ideas and thoughts. In the chapter dealing with ecological issues in the Himalayan region, the author points out that climate change has to be viewed in the context of enormous disturbances to ecosystems. We are now playing with the nature. That's why nature also is playing with us. So we have to take care of this important aspect if you want to have peaceful living. I'm happy that India has joined the international community and signing the agreement also, Paris Agreement also. I don't know why some countries are trying to back out after initially supporting the same. He says the threat to South Asia is especially more tangible both in the Himalayan region and in the Western Ghats. One cannot continue living as in the past. If the Himalayan glaciers melt and forests will be lost at an alarming rate with many birds, mammals and other species on way to extinction, we will be making our planet more uninhabitable and unsustainable. I remember my childhood when I used to go to my grandmother's place from my place. We have to walk around at 2 to 3 kilometers. So our elders used to say, don't go to that place in the evening. I said, why? I said, you have to cross a forest. And then they used to give some support to us, and with the help of those people who used to go to the village. But today, to my surprise, when I go to my grandmother's place, there's not even one tree. Forget about the forest. Direct living example in front of me, around my native place, where I was born, where I was brought up and all. This sort of damage we have done to ourselves. So the lesson is that we have to protect the nature. We have to protect the nature. And we are not doing any favor by this tree plantation or by preservation of our age-old ponds, rivulets, rivers. Recently there is a movement for regeneration of the rivers and all. It is for protection of our future, our livelihood. And this should be taken up seriously, not by the government alone. But unfortunately, over the years, we Indians have developed a habit that maybe politicians are responsible. Of course, I was also in politics till the other day. Now I'm not in politics. सब काम सरकार करेगा, हम बेकार बैठे तो चलेगा. You can't leave everything to government. Unless the civil society also participates in the same, then no movement can be successful. And the Prime Minister launched this Swachha Bharat Abhiyan. He told me, Venkaiah ji, इसको राजनीतिक रूप नहीं देना, इसको सरकारी कार्यक्रम के रूप में नहीं देखना. तो मुझे थोड़ा आश्चर्य लगा, सरकारी कार्यक्रम नहीं है, फिर राजनीतिक नहीं तो और क्या है? और उन्होंने कहा ना, इसको एक जन आंदोलन का रूप देना चाहिए. You have to make it a people's movement. Swachha Bharat campaign, and I was dealing with the urban development for a while. It's true that unless people join any movement, you cannot expect a good results. Friends, Mr. Singh too emphasizes the need for imparting ethical values to students and sensitizing them to the needs of harmonious society in the chapter on science, spirituality and ways of living. A plea for integrated education. That's the need of the hour. You rightly point out. And I was a student, I remember that there used to be a moral science. Now there is only science, no morals. That's why all these things are happening. We must really seriously point. Those days, I recall those days, there used to be a craft class. There used to be a gardening. There used to be compulsory NCC or air wing or naval. You have to choose one of the courses. Now nothing. 24 hours, morning to evening, like 24 into 7 TV, bugging. So much load. So there is every need, as he rightly said, science, spirituality and ways of living. And a plea for integrated education. The entire world, globe, is looking towards spirituality, looking to India. Because we have a great past. That's why the Prime Minister promoted yoga. There was an international acceptance also. Yoga, again, is a great Indian art. So other interesting chapters as democracy and its consequences and good governance. A narrative from democratic India in the chapter, The Emerging World, Challenges and Possibilities. Mr. Singh quite correctly says that the future of peace and harmony in the 21st century would be directly linked to ecology, global warming and climate change, nuclear weapons, emerging technology of welfare and continuing arms race among nation states, geopolitical and nationalism, religious extremism, poverty and inequality. These last point, poverty and inequality, these things has to be addressed on a war footing. I am happy that the governments of the day are doing their own way. And we must all put our minds together and come out with ideas to reduce economic disparities. Poverty is the main challenge before us and before many parts of the country. So that has to also be tackled. I am not subscribing to the people, these things are there because of poverty alone, no. But because of poverty of ideology, poverty of ideology also make people, some people to take arms and take to violence. But at the same time, it is the duty of a civilization to take care to see the suppressed, the depressed, oppressed people. Where Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Dindal Upadhyaya, they all said uplifting the poorest of the poor. That should be the priority of any government, that should be the priority of any system, that should be the priority of civilization. The economic, the disparities has to be narrowed down. Emphasizing that the role of national and global multilateral organizations would be vital. Mr. Singh observes that the 21st century would be dominated by a pluralist ethos, multiple nation states, multiple centers of power, multiple faiths, multiple cultures, multiple economies, and multiple languages. He says, we cannot envisage a world without conflicts or natural disasters. All I am advocating is to bring down mind walls and that divide people and create hatred. Indeed, that has to be the effort at every level, at individual, at the community, at the national, at the state, at the global for peace and prosperity to coexist, to make this planet a truly marvelous place for humans and all other living creatures. Bringing down the walls that divide us, engaging in dialogue, appreciating each other's viewpoint, and promoting peaceful coexistence has been the essence of Indian ethos from the times immemorial. In this world view that we need to draw upon, Bahuda approach is yet another shining star that can lead us our quest for peace and harmony. As mentioned earlier, It is a timely book. It's a thought where we should all go through it and then exchange our ideas and learn from the experiences. Friends, one of the important components for peace, as I told you, is progress and development. Mere development alone will not suffice unless development is followed by good governance. विकास के साथ ही साथ सुशासन भी होना चाहिए. सुशासन बहुत जरूरी है. नहीं तो जो सरकार यहाँ जो सोचेंगे वो नीचे तक नहीं गया तो मतलब नहीं है कार्यक्रमों का. मुझे याद आ रहे, स्मरण आ रहे, पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री श्री राजीव गांधी जी ने एक जमाने में कहा, मैं 100 रुपए भेजता हूँ दिल्ली से, तो अनंतपुरम और तिरुवनंतपुरम पहुंचने में केवल 15 रुपए पहुंचता है, बाकी पाइपलाइन में लीक होता है. It was a commentary and it was a sincere statement came out of that person's mind at the time. So we should see to it that there is no leakage and come out with ideas to see that the money reaches the targeted people. Whether you go through DBT, whether you go through JAM, whether you go through other things or whatever it means, you must see to it that the development, the fruits of development reaches the targeted. That should be the endeavor in a democratic system. We should see to it that the hunger, the illiteracy, the poverty, the malnutrition, all these challenges has to be fairly met. At the same time, we have to educate the people that the terror or the violence is no solution, because we have seen also the ideologies that preach violence. The people used to say the gun, the bullet brings the change. Bullet will never bring the change. You can kill somebody, but you can also get killed. That is the history in India also. Ballot is more powerful than bullet. We have seen a lot of strong leaders, great leaders, but also defeated simply by putting a ballot. So in a democracy, one must have that confidence and one must educate the younger generation about the need to have peaceful means and democratic means. Fortunately, we have a great past, democratic past, and we should continue to not only cherish it, to nourish it, and also to promote it. So this is a book that should trigger a thought process towards a better world. I feel always that everybody should learn. Learn, then earn. Learn and then earn. At this age, what we earn much more knowledge, so that we can educate the younger generation. I once again compliment the author, Mr. Singh, and hope that his writings will inspire more Indians to look back at the rich heritage, draw inspiration and move forward. I am very happy once again to meet all this galaxy of distinguished people of Delhi. I am also, Mr. Singh, I must say on record, I was very much impressed by your granddaughter, Gauri Singh. The way she has summarized the book and explained it, even at this young age, that really speaks of the inherent talent in India's talent. What we need is that we must promote it. We must encourage it. That's all. You have rightly chosen her to introduce the book that way. She has done half of my job. I did not go in detail into the book. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your valuable thoughts and experiences with us. I would now request Shri Balmiki Prasad Singh to please deliver vote of thanks.
You should speak about his book.
Namaskar. Respected Uparashtrapati Ji, Honorable Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Sri Nand Vohra Ji, Natasha Ji, Meenakshi Ji, Deepankar Ji, Gauri, respected former governors and leaders, honorable members of parliament, excellencies, dear batchmates and personal friends, academicians from Delhi and from outside, members of the press, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. The respected Uparashtrapati Ji has to leave, so I take this opportunity to thank him for his gracious presence, for releasing the book and giving an inspiring address. But I would like to leave one thought with him and with all of you. And then I promise you I will come again. Yes. Unprecedented happenings do take place in relation to a new publication. My previous book, Bahudha in the Post 9/11 World, was published by Oxford University Press in April 2008. The book release function was organized by OUP New York in the magnificent hall of our consulate there. I warmly accepted the invitation to join the event. Meanwhile, I received a mail from Nico Fent, the head of OUP New York, stating that a friend of his is deeply impressed with Bahudha. He is a manufacturer of chocolates and would like his new chocolate to be named Bahudha chocolate. And he wanted to have my approval, and also the amount of royalty that he should pay to me. I told him no royalty is required, except that he may give 2 pieces of Bahudha chocolate to everyone joining the book launch. There is no such provision today here. This was done, and I must tell you, I can still remember the taste of Bahudha chocolates. After the event, in the night when I went to sleep, I got worried as to whether the Bahudha approach that I have propounded after 4 years of research and contemplation would have this future of Bahudha chocolate. Thankfully, the Bahudha approach has been receiving global appreciation since then, and I compliment and congratulate and express my gratefulness that respected Rashtrapati Ji, and I know many of you have appreciated this approach. In India, for the last 8 weeks, the fall in growth of GDP, gross domestic product, is flavor of public discourse. However, 18 months ago, when I was finalizing the manuscript of the 21st century, I had discussed the importance of GDP as a barometer of national progress. I devoted 11 paragraphs in the book highlighting its inadequacies as well as its importance, as also the concept of gross national happiness proposed by the former king of Bhutan in 1917. I acknowledge the presence of the ambassador of Bhutan in this meeting. I conclude that GDP and productivity growth are indeed important, but it does not take much imagination to realize that they do not encapsulate with themselves several facets of the evolution in human nature, nor do they count the full range of human aspirations. Perhaps Robert Kennedy conveyed most poetically the idea that there is far more to life than what GDP on its own can even measure. He wrote, and I quote him, "The gross national product does not include the beauty of our poetry or the intelligence of our public debate. It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile." Unquote. There is considerable merit in this observation. I am, however, certain that the burial ceremony of GDP will not take place in the 21st century. Even if we no longer use GDP exclusively for measuring development, it would not mean that it must be gotten rid of. Friends, the other day, Sujan Pal Singh, I don't know if he's here, a brilliant scholar and close associate of Dr. Kalam, mentioned to me that it is easy to remember the book as the GDP of the 21st century. Geo-politics, democracy and peace. The observation set me thinking as to whether this book could be the GDP of the 21st century. GDP is being treated as a grade in the government's report card. Will this book be graded in terms of its GDP norms or in the wider context of human and civilizational values? Could this book be a change agent? It is true that geopolitics, democracy and peace are subjects that have fascinated me most as a student of political science and continue to do so. But I never thought about these implications while formulating the title of the book. Nitasha ji, who was associated with Baghdad and the post 9/11 world and also this book, is well aware of how the title was arrived at. I do not know the answer to these questions. It is for scholars, and several of them are sitting here, to ponder over and take a view whether this book will be the GDP of the 21st century. For I firmly believe in Sanskrit ancient saying in Sanskrit said, Kavih Karod Kavyani Rasam Janati Pandita. You have heard Professor Gopinath, and then you see more meanings. In fact, I see more meanings in the book than what I had written. When I wrote this book, I was deeply conscious of the fact that the world is in a state of flux. And then there are lopsided, climate change alone, arms race on the other side. Then traditional methods of conservation are being ignored. New knowledge centers are devoid of, are only technology driven, not morality driven. So this was there, but I must tell you that the real purpose of this book was that would this society be in a position to produce good leaders in different walks of life. I don't mean only political leaders. As I put it at one place, would the 21st century have enough leaders in different walks of life to take our people to follow the right path? Or would the world be guided by demagogues and fascists, a phenomenon that we witnessed in the 20th century? This is the crux of the problem. And we have to understand and appreciate that both institutions and individuals are important. Institutions mold character, and individuals provide resilience and flexibility to institutions. The need is to nurture the moral strength of men and women and their leaders to live with compassion and to spend their energies working for peace and genuine development. Now I am also answering that question in my own way. Would this book be the GDP of the 21st century? I don't know the answer, as I told you. But I am putting this book to a test after listening to several of the comments from Vice President, from Gopinath ji, Meenakshi Gopinath ji, and of course my granddaughter Gauri. And I have put it this way, To me, the usefulness of a work lies in whether it speaks in times of crisis, when consulted or becomes ornament on a bookshelf. And again, pardon me, I'm quoting Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. He compared a book to an idol in the temple. And he said, I'm first reading the English translation of that, creation is complete, but does it have life? If I interrogate it, will the idol reply? If one day fire erupts in the temple's heart, will the idol speak or remain still in strife? In Hindi he says, रचना तो पूरी हुई, जान भी है इसमें, पूछूं जो कोई बात मूर्त बतलाएगी, लग जाए आग यदि किसी रोज देवालय में, तो चौंकेगी या खरी खरी जल जाएगी. I submit this book to that test, and I thank you for your gracious presence. He tells me no chocolates, but there is tea outside.
Very good.